Deals on wheels in Melbourne. After you, says David Coulthard to McLaren teammate Mika Häkkinen. The manoeuvre uncorks a storm of protest. Now McLaren and Formula One are under the microscope in Brazil. Interlagos, in the south of sprawling Sao Paulo, bumpy and demanding. The qualifying hour for the Brazilian Grand Prix starts in just over 15 minutes. Good afternoon. It's all eyes on the McLarens this weekend after that rumpus in Australia. And the team based at Woking in Surrey are at the centre of a major news story that's broken here at Interlagos within the last couple of hours. After protests from the pit lane led by Ferrari, the McLaren braking system has been declared illegal. More details now from Martin Brundle.
McLaren have given their drivers an extra pedal to brake the inside rear wheel to help turn the car through and out of the corner. McLaren say it's legitimate. Other teams say that the use of this third pedal is contrary to the regulations. It is a steering device. A Ferrari-led protest forced the FIA into taking their harsh decision.
Well, I think it was necessary to get a ruling, and you know, I don't think anyone was claiming that anybody was doing anything deliberately cheating or anything else. It was not at all, but there was a lack of clarity, and you know, the stewards had to be asked to make a ruling one way or the other, so we all knew where to go. So they've done that, and hopefully that's the end of the matter.
Personally, I see you probably see better racing because the cars will move around better, and I think in the interest of spectators, in the interest of sport, that can only be good.
I think they could be barking up the wrong tree. It's not just that brake system. The engine is smaller, lower, more powerful, and under the new technical director Adrian Newey's guidance, the aerodynamic package is just right. The car has been quick out of the box, and now with the advantage of the Bridgestone tyres, they lap the entire field in Melbourne, and the other team players are not so happy.
So obviously all of the bigger teams running in their wake at the moment are planning about how they're going to get up into the same up to the same sort of speed.
We've just actually heard from McLaren they're not going to appeal about that ruling, but they will be seeking further advice. The story is far from over. But what difference will that actually make, Tony Jardine?
Well, not a tremendous amount of difference. McLaren have still been quick, as we've seen in practice so far. But what it actually means is that it's less of a complication for other teams to try and catch up. It's a very, very difficult system because it brakes on the individual wheels, as Martin said, but somewhere in the cockpit the driver has to flick a switch to either brake on that wheel if it's a right-hander or that wheel if it's a left-hander, then do it again to straighten the car up. Then you juggle with the left foot. Villeneuve's tried it, he doesn't like it, Hill can't get on with it. All the teams must be breathing a huge sigh of relief. That's one extra technological thing they don't have to catch up on.
As we said, a couple of the other teams, Jordan and Williams, have had a go at it, but difference today, I mean, McLaren still look well clear, don't they?
They still look well clear because it's a package of things. It's 5 or 6 things they've got, but at least the teams have got a clear ruling on it. It's one extra complication that's out of the way.
Okay. Well, even before today's ruling, we were all wondering how McLaren would react after their stroll through Albert Park at the Australian Grand Prix.
I would expect there has to be some kind of team orders coming into play in this race at some point. We don't know when.
Häkkinen coming in for a second stop.
It's earlier than I would have expected him to, and he's gone through. He's been carried on through the pits. There's nobody in the pit lane. There he goes, locking up the wheels. Mika, calm down.
What is going on? They say they didn't signal him in. He drove through the pit lane.
He's not. He seems like it's just all gone wrong in 2 or 3 laps with some crazy things. Coulthard slowing down.
And Häkkinen takes the lead. Now that looked like a planned move to me, Martin.
The smart thing was to come away with 16 points. I would have preferred to have had the lion's share, but you know, you can't make agreements and break them.
Team orders have been around in Grand Prix for tens of years. The drivers did exactly what they were asked to do, which was to put the team first. How that unfolded was not, let's say, as we would have liked, but you can't provide for every single scenario, and what we hadn't provided for was a compounding of errors, some of which was down to the team, some of which was down to Nico, and David's desire to try and rectify those mistakes. There was a degree of confusion, there was a degree of uncertainty, and in that environment, you know, things happened that maybe when you look back on them you would have preferred didn't happen.
I don't know that I agree with the idea, but the point is, if he gave his word, as I believe David Coulthard did, and he's a gentleman, I think then you have to. I mean, when I said to Rob Walker I'd drive for him, I didn't need a contract, and I think if he says or they say to each other, listen, the person who gets to the corner first is going to be allowed to win, you have to stand by it. I don't think there's any excuse for not standing by it.
Do I regret the bad publicity? Yes. Am I in complete agreement with people's opinions? Most definitely no.
People are in an uproar because of the way it happened, and because, of course, Miko went back too far because he was pulled in by mistake or something. It's unfortunate, but I think it was right.
We've received letters of complaint, several, all from people that have gambled money on David Coulthard. I mean, this isn't a sport for gambling, and even if it was, like in anything that you gamble in, you should understand exactly what the sport's all about. And you know, it's not unusual for teammates to drive for the team.
David was a gentleman. I think people don't expect that now from drivers. They don't expect the ethics and so on to matter. It did in the old days. I mean, I can remember Phil Hill correctly in Casablanca when I was racing, backed off from leading and let Mike Hawthorne take the lead to win the title. Correctly, I mean, or secondly actually, he had to be. But he did, it was the right thing, and anybody who was good would have done it. But now it's amazing that it happened.
Was it good for the sport? Possibly not. Should the regulations change? If the regulations change, we will run the race accordingly. Yes, there's regret, but I'm not ashamed of anything. You know, we went there as a racing team to do a job, and we did it.
It ruined McLaren's big day. I know that a lot of you out there felt cheated by what you saw in Australia. Tony Jardine, a few weeks down the line, what are your thoughts?
Well, it definitely affected the image of the sport. I think it was really bad because he had 16 points on the board, and after those two messed up pit stops, especially the second Phantom one, they should have left it as it was, because after that it became contrived and fabricated. It's all very well McLaren looking on the inside in, but if you look from the outside in, you can see that was the wrong perception for the general public. Bernie Ecclestone said that for that to happen at the beginning of the season was also wrong. If they were fighting for the championship, if it was team orders, the public would understand it. Right at the beginning of the season, no.
You know a bit about public relations, don't you? How much of a public relations own goal was this for Formula One?
I think a very big one. We've got to repair the damage after that. We want to see wheel-to-wheel racing. The best man should win out there on the track. That's what we all want to see. So, yeah, it'll take 2 or 3 races before we get some of the people back who are doubting.
Just briefly, there's been a warning from the governing body about team tactics after Australia. What effect will that have?
Well, simply they're going to have to watch it. So in other words, if you as a team boss are thinking about fabricating the results and say to one of your drivers, slow down, first of all, you'll be heard on the system. Secondly, the FIA can look at your telemetry and see the timing of your car if it's deliberately slow to let the other guy come past. So you better be very careful.
OK, well, precious little sympathy from Ron Dennis to you punters out there who lost your money on David Coulthard, and a dramatic change in the Formula One betting since Australia. Look at that. Mika Hakkinen is now the odds-on favourite at 4-5 to win the championship title. 7-4, David Coulthard is the second favourite. And look at that. Villeneuve 10-1 and Damon Hill out there at 150-1. OK, the ruling that McLaren's braking system is illegal is the day's big story, but here's James Allen and Louise Goodman to bring you right up to date with the other developments in the world of F1.
The heat is on Jackie Stewart this weekend with stories that Ford is considering a deal to supply Benetton with engines for 99. Benetton's technical director, Pat Simmons, is rumoured to have visited Ford Cosworth's factory last week. Benetton and Ford won the world title together in '94.
Rumours abound that Craig Pollock's British American Racing will get Honda power when his new team starts next year.
There's good news for Damon Hill. After a disappointing Melbourne, Jordan's new front suspension and aerodynamic modifications went well in testing last week and are being used here in Brazil.
France will now have a Grand Prix this year. The long-standing dispute over TV rights has been resolved and the race is set for the 28th of June, just before the British Grand Prix.
David Coulthard turned 27 on Friday. After his generosity in Melbourne, the Scot will be hoping for a nice present from his McLaren team.
And happy returns to DC. Well, now let's turn our attention towards the qualifying hour of the Brazilian Grand Prix. Interlagos, well, it's spectacular, but it does pose special problems. Let's rejoin Martin Brundle now, shall we? He's taking a stroll around the demanding track.
And so to the circuit, 2.66 miles. Over my shoulder you can see the start-finish straight. This is one of the driver's favourite circuits, and that straight funnels into the first corner called the Senna S, one of the few complexes in the world worthy of the great man's name. Why? Because you arrive at 190 miles an hour, brake very hard down into second gear, sweeping left dramatically downhill, and then through the right-hander you must stay full throttle, otherwise your lap is over before it's almost begun. There are three distinct sections to this racetrack. The first, relatively fast and open. The mid-section, full of first and second gear corners, is tight, super critical how you apply the throttle and the brakes. Then through to the end, starting right here in Juncao. A left-hander, you must take every mile an hour you can through the apex right there, because you're leading immediately into a very steep hill. And when you plant the throttle here, the engine really labours. So you're homing in on the last few hundred metres of the lap. You can see the camber for yourselves. Yet another left-hand corner on this unusually anti-clockwise circuit. By now your neck is killing you from the G-forces. It looks very wide, but actually this part of the racetrack tends to stay very dirty, and all the action goes on down there, and it can be very frantic in the chase to the line.
I think it's a really great circuit. It's physically very demanding, very hard to do to cars. It's quite a bumpy circuit. I like it. Personally, it's a circuit which suits my driving style.
The tarmac is really in poor shape in some places, so the grip level changes all around the circuit. It's quite an interesting circuit to race on.
Tarmac's a bit too bumpy, but they did some good changes on the safety areas and improved a lot the safety of the track. I like this track. It's a really big pleasure for me to drive at home.
Well then, Martin, Pedro likes the track, but quite a few people have been spinning off over the last couple of days.
Absolutely. I've been walking around the circuit with Gerhard Berger sitting on the inside, and the drivers are really working hard, no doubt new to the new regulations, the groove tyres. It's a pleasure to watch, actually, as they're trying to find the limits. And certainly David Coulthard spun off this morning, along with Michael Schumacher. Villeneuve hit the wall, truly hit exactly the same piece of wall. And Johnny Herbert had a really nasty accident when his throttle stuck open going into a slow corner, and he'd have been thinking about his feet at that moment. But anyway, qualifying looks like it could be interesting. But if they want to beat these two McLarens behind me, they're going to have to protest their throttle pedals, because they're still flying. Back to you, Jim.
Cheers, Martin. Thank you very much indeed. Well, as he mentioned, there are two British drivers been in trouble this morning. The McLarens remain quickest, around about a second quicker than Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Williams. But David Coulthard, well, he just lost it, basically, and McLaren's held the hand up and said DC had a bad moment there. Might have been too many birthday celebrations, who knows. Johnny Herbert, though, his throttle stuck open, and it was a nasty old hit for Johnny, who had lots of problems yesterday in his Sauber as well, and he will be in his spare car for qualifying. Interlagos, hot and very sticky. Stand by for the qualifying hour of the Brazilian Grand Prix.